It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 27. How to work as a stand-in and not lose sight of your acting goals, with Alanna Blair.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and you're listening to the weekly podcast about acting, earning money, and balancing it all. Thanks so much for listening. And if you're new to the podcast and haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button on iTunes or in your podcast app, and you'll get weekly episodes as they come out. This is episode 27, titled How to Work as a Stand-In and Not Lose Sight of Your Acting Goals, with Alanna Blair. The show notes for this episode have all the important links referenced in today's show, which you can pull up right now at actingincome.com/episode 27. And now, here's a word from today's sponsor, the Stand-In Handbook. As you'll learn in today's episode, standing in can be a lucrative and educational job for the actor. And if you want to learn how to be a stand-in on TV shows or feature films, you'll want to download the Stand-In Handbook. The Stand-In Handbook teaches you the job of the stand-in, so you know what's expected of you the first day you're on set. And if you think you already know what to do, the Stand-In Handbook will answer many of the questions you haven't thought of as you do more and more stand-in work. It's the only book out there all about standing in. To get a deal on the Stand-In Handbook and also the downloadable call sheet cheat sheet, visit standincentral.com/handbook. That's standincentral.com/handbook. Today's episode is all about working as a stand-in in television and film. But it's not about being a stand-in as your end goal. Instead, it's about using work as a stand-in to supplement your acting goals. Stand-ins on a film and television set are the people who take the place of the actors when the crew sets up a shot and when the actors are in hair, makeup, or wardrobe. I write all about standing in on the website Stand In Central, and it's a job I take pretty seriously. On some sets, it's a very serious job. On other sets, it's not as serious. But on nearly every union set, it pays pretty decent money, and you learn a heck of a lot about filmmaking you can't learn in a classroom. My guest today is Alanna Blair. She's been a stand-in for lead actors on some high-profile television projects. But she's also an actor, and that's the angle we're touching on today. Standing in without losing track of your acting goals. As you'll learn from my interview with Alanna, she was strategic in her employment as a stand-in, and you'll learn some insights into working as a stand-in so you know how to deal with auditions, the time investment, and the other responsibilities should you have the opportunity to take on stand-in work. Alanna's also a DJ, and you're listening to a live mix by her drum and bass duo, Tank Top. She also plays bass in a band that I really like. Alanna moved to New York City in 2008 after earning a BFA from Cal Arts, and she recently appeared in the 2015 New York International Fringe Festival. Her full bio and links to her projects are in the show notes. And now, make way for my interview with actor Alanna Blair. Alanna Blair, welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. Sababa, 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 sababa.
Sababa.
That term will make sense probably much later in the interview. Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. You are an actor, Alanna, and you're also a stand-in. You work as a stand-in, some pretty big projects. They'll probably go unnamed in this conversation. And you also stand in for the leads on some of these projects, or have done that. And you're faced with the problem of trying to balance an acting career while also taking on this huge responsibility. So today I want to talk about that. So if there are any actors out there who are listening to this and are interested in stand-in work and really want to figure out how not to completely give up on their acting work when they're standing in, I'm hoping that you'll have some fantastic advice on that very topic, because I know I want to learn about that too. So tell me, Alanna, describe your work as a stand-in and the demands that it puts on your time.
Long story short, a stand-in is there for the actor. What we do is while an actor is getting ready, going into makeup, costumes, all of that stuff, we stand in their place. We do the actions that they do, and we work closely with the crew, camera, lighting, grips, to make sure that when the actor returns and they're ready to film, that they look fabulous, they're always in the light, and that everybody's comfortable so the actor can just go in and do their thing. If we've done our job right, you'll have no idea we were there.
Now, you're an actor, as I said, and you've also stood in on some long-term projects. What kind of time commitment has stand-in work been for you?
Depending on what kind of actor you're standing in for. If you're standing in for the lead of a show, expect for your entire life to be consumed or threatened to be consumed by whatever job you're standing in for. I recently stood in for a police procedural. It was the first season, and nobody knew whether it was going to be picked up for what we call the back nine. So my original commitment was from August through December. Even that's a pretty big chunk of change.
And you knew that when you took the job that it would be from August to December.
Yes. And it's easy to say, okay, well, Monday through Friday, August to December, sometime between 7 a.m. and who knows when we'll be done. I'm going to be on the same set, working with the same people, working for this actor. And it's another thing for that to actually happen. And then sure enough, we got picked up for the back nine, which is an extra 9 episodes to round out the first season. And all of a sudden we were there till April. So I was working with more or less the same people from August till April. And that was more or less Monday through Friday, more or less 12 plus hours a day.
12 plus hours a day. So that means if you started at 7 in the morning, you're wrapping at 8, 9. You could sometimes wrap early, but maybe you don't know that in advance.
Mm-hmm. And there are a total of 2 shows that I have done this kind of stand-in work on. The most recent one, I also was sort of a backup photo double, meaning that if by the end of the day, the actor that I was standing in for needed to go home, she would leave and I would take over. So a lot of times I would even be around after the actor had left. So they'd be extra long hours, which has its benefits and things that you have to figure out how to deal with.
We'll touch a little bit on that. I want to distinguish between a stand-in and a photo double. Sometimes people in the media use the terms interchangeably. When it comes to union jobs, it's actually not the case. A stand-in is there to set up the shot and is off camera, but a photo double is there to replace an actor, and the photo double is on camera. So when you're standing in and you're also photo doubling, at least in terms of union contracts, you're being paid 2 rates. You're paid special ability as a stand-in at a slightly higher special ability rate, and you get an additional special ability rate as a photo double.
This is correct, yes.
So what are some of the reasons an actor would dare even become a stand-in? If you're on set from 7 to 8 o'clock at night, I'm guessing it's impossible to audition. But maybe you found a way to work. Can you tell me why an actor might gravitate to standing in?
Coming from my own experience, the only film work that I had done up to the point when I started doing background, which is how I started with this whole thing, was I really only did indie films. So that would be the director was also the cinematographer, was also the cameraman, and the lighting was also the producer, who was also craft services. So we'd be working on these incredible films, but with tiny budgets and 5 people total on crew. And if anybody's been to a TV or film set that's of the larger variety, you have dozens, even hundreds of people, and each of them has a specific job. It can be completely terrifying to walk on a set and not know what everybody does. Also, working background, you wind up sort of isolated with the other background members. They bring you on to set when they need you, and then they take you away when they no longer need you. A stand-in is technically considered part of the crew. We're not really actors, we're crew. So we work closely with all of these different people. So for me, it was a great opportunity to figure out what everybody does. If there's a problem, who should I talk to? If I can't get the answer from them, who else do I talk to? It's all about set etiquette. And it's something that a lot of up-and-coming startup actors don't necessarily, it's not intuitive.
What's not intuitive?
Knowing who does what. And it can be very intimidating, especially if you've done your auditions, you have an under 5, you're super excited, you're on the set. It's like a well-oiled machine, and you don't want to be a monkey in the gears, as it were.
Oh, I agree. And it's interesting what you said about background. When you're background, you are behind the scenes, much as all the other cast is behind the scenes. But when you're a stand-in, it's almost as if you're behind the scenes of behind the scenes. You see how the shot is set up. You learn about the diversification of labor, and you see how different people have different jobs. Even the smallest little job is handled by someone specifically. And you also see how the whole shot and the whole scene is constructed. An actor who's not paying attention, whether it be a background actor or a first-team actor, may not be aware of that. But the stand-in, whose eyes are open, starts to become acutely aware. And you've learned stuff as an actor by having that vantage point. Am I correct?
Oh my gosh, I have learned so much. And that's when I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to do the stand-in work that I did, and even a little bit of photo doubling. Because now when I go in for an audition, I know what's on the other side. It's not intimidating. It's something that I understand as a skill set and as a job.
Can you list off some of the things that come to mind you learned from standing in that you didn't know as an actor, and now you can take that information as you move forward as an actor?
Definitely. I've learned a lot about set etiquette. I've learned about when to be ready. I've learned about the fact that all these things will happen and you can't let anything throw you. Maybe your scene will get swapped with another scene. Maybe you wind up on set all day waiting for this one chance to deliver your one line. You can't let it get to you. Everybody's working together. Everyone at the end of the day wants to go home. Also, just in terms of technicality, a lot of us have gone to art school. Some of us have taken acting classes. Who talks about how to hit your mark? In terms of the crew, that's all they really want you to be able to do. Is hit your mark. Otherwise, you're not lit and the shot doesn't work. I'll see a lot of actors come in not really with that kind of experience and not hit their mark. Oh no, we have to start over. That's extra time. They're feeling bad. That sort of thing. Technical things are just as important to the crew as the actual acting is to us as actors.
Right. It's not just all about the art. There's a whole mechanics that goes into not just the acting, but also into the creation of the shot. And I would say that the more the actor knows about those things, the better the actor is. Actors can adjust their expectations because they know more about what's going on. If instead they show up to the set ignorant or naive about what's going on, they might show up and think, oh, my short little 1/8 of a page scene should only take about a half an hour to shoot, when they are so rudely awakened to find out it's actually going to take 8 hours to shoot their 1/8 of a page scene.
Yes, I've seen actors come in to deliver their one little line and they don't get around to it. They have to come back another day and do it. Of course, at the end of the day, it's extra money, so that's nice. But it's all about being confident in your own abilities, both in the technical aspect and as an actor, and not getting thrown by whatever's going on around you. To know that at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're all in it to make a great product.
Well, we're all in this together. Do the people you work with when you work as a stand-in know that you're also an actor? The reason I ask is sometimes when you're seen as a stand-in, crew members will see you just as a stand-in, as if that's what you aspire to. So I wanted to see if maybe you put it out there that you're an actor or whether you keep it private.
It depends on the show and it depends on the people that you're working with. When you work with more or less the same crew from August to April, you get to know each other pretty darn well. People had kids, people had other achievements, people would leave to do independent projects and come back. We really did feel, especially at the end, as part of a family. So a lot of people knew that I would be up for other acting things. People would tell me break a leg on things. People also knew the other activities that I was up to. I also think it's important to not go in as an actor, but to make sure that people understand you do have this set of skills and acting is one of them.
I agree. You want to put it out there at least somehow that you're an actor. At least I know I have that desire. I want someone to use my skills when I'm a stand-in. Now, of course, as an actor, you're also balancing that acting career. If you're on set for 12, 13 hours a day or an unknown amount of hours a day, and if you're on set for 5 days a week, that seems to suggest that maybe you can only audition on Saturdays and Sundays. But that's not the case, and that's not the reality because most auditions probably come up on weekdays. Alanna, how do you manage auditions as an actor during these times when you're standing in?
I definitely had to adjust my expectations about what kind of projects I could audition for and how I can audition for them. Between this unnamed procedural and a show that I had stood in before, I basically spent a year only standing in Monday through Friday. If there was an audition here and there that I could sneak in, that would only have a conflict for a day or would only shoot on the weekend, I could totally do that. I did a lot of fun little independent projects. I did a ton of voiceover work.
Alanna, I remember working with you on set one day and you had an... I hope I don't get you into trouble. You had an audition come up and you tried to squeeze it in at lunchtime. You were shooting in Queens in Long Island City at Silver Cup Studios, and I believe your audition was in Greenpoint, which involves a bike ride and traversing a bridge to get to. You came back, you were a little late. People were like, where's Alanna? Where's Alanna? And you slid in a little sweatier. but you slid in. I'm guessing that's not always the case, that you're sneaking out at the unknown lunch break.
I feel like I should give the caveat that if you do want to stand in on one day of a show, do not do this. Don't do it. Just be there on set the whole time. If you're with these guys from August to April and you happen to know, the background PA pretty well and maybe the second, and you can give them the heads up and be like, hey, I'm doing something. I may be a little late. And they're okay with it. That's totally fine. On a case-by-case basis, remember the show that you work on comes first. However, if there's, say, a commercial audition, they're like, we'll see you anytime between this time period and this time period, then yeah, by all means, take a little bit of time, go and see what's up. It also helps with perspective, I think, because if you're working on one set for a long period of time, you can sometimes forget what's going on in the outside world and that you have opportunities and you just have to figure out how to balance the two of them.
So kind of what you're saying, Alanna, is that it's relationships. If you've built relationships on a set, then you might have a little wiggle room when it comes to an audition that comes up. That's not a guarantee, obviously. You got to feel these things out. And I hear your advice about if you're just standing in one day, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that either. But you're an actor and you're not all about auditions. You're all about bookings. So if you take a long-term stand-in job, and you book something from one of these auditions in the middle of your long-term stand-in gig, how do you handle that? How do you handle that with production? How do you handle that with casting? Walk me through how you've negotiated that when you've booked something.
One of the biggest things to keep in mind is that even though stand-ins are considered part of the crew, we are hired through whatever casting company works with background. So I also created relationships with, in this case, it was Grant Wilfley for one and Roman Candle Casting for the other.
Grant Wilfley Casting and Roman Candle Casting.
Yes, exactly. They cast background. They also cast stand-ins. So in terms of the most recent one that I did, they actually brought me in and auditioned me. This was a very serious commitment, and they wanted to make sure that I was cool with it. Also, because they had me in their back pocket as a potential photo double, they dyed my hair. They had it in the same style. So that was a big part of me as an actor. I knew that I was taking on somebody else's persona. As a matter of fact, I had to get new headshots to show my new hairstyle. More than that, I understood the fact that this was going to be a year-long commitment, very similar to school, except I was getting paid. So I took it for what it was. I could try to do other projects. I had to use my own judgment and always remember that the show I worked on came first. And I didn't do as much work as I usually did, but I learned so much that now that I'm on the other side of things, season 2 started. They said, do you want to come back? I said, nay, I'm going to work on my own career now. And now I can use that entire skill set on my acting career. And now is the reward, truly.
I mirror that sentiment, too, when it comes to managing your relationships with casting, especially when you have other bookings. And casting and production are connected and they can talk. So you can also talk to production and production can talk to casting when you have a booking. But setting those expectations up with casting early on, I have found to be very helpful, especially when you have a book out. Because when you book out for your own work, they understand that it can happen. But if you don't set those expectations up with casting early on, it may be a little scary asking for that time off. Now, granted, you could still find that you book out something, even have a fantastic relationship with casting, and you lose your stand-in job. That can happen. So you talk about photo doubling, and I want to talk about that too. There are implications when you take stand-in job. Not only there are implications on your time and how available you are, but there's implications on your appearance. If you stand in, you may have to maintain a certain appearance. And if you have a potential to photo double, you may doubly have to maintain an appearance such that you limit your own expression as an actor and your own brand. So that is something really to consider. What have you had to do with respect to your image? You said you took new headshots, which sounds like a really innovative way to handle that. Are there any other image things you've had to concern yourself when you've taken a stand-in job?
If you look at any stand-in's wardrobe, you're going to see a lot of gray. Fortunately, both of the shows that I stood in on weren't very interested in color coverage. Color coverage is a term that they'll use to where if the actor is wearing a certain color, sometimes they'll expect the stand-in to wear the same color. It really depends on the director of photography and the camera people, what their preference is. For us, we kind of kept it easy, which was nice. So I didn't have to grab a whole new wardrobe. Just a lot of gray.
And stand-in work has implications not just on your actor image, but also on your acting income. Stand-in work can be, depending on what you expect in terms of money in your jobs, can be fairly lucrative. And there can be also different benefits to working on a union job as a stand-in. What can you expect in terms of money when it comes to stand-in work?
You can expect a lot of money, really. It really depends on what your expectations are. As of now, which is September 2015, rates are about $180 and up over 8 hours. After 10 hours, you get time and a half. After 12 hours, you get double time. So if you're standing in for a lead who's on set a lot, you're going to wind up raking it in. You're also not going to get the time to enjoy it. So now is the time, while you're in the middle of a stand-in job, to put it all aside, pay off your debt, and look to the future for when you will no longer have this job. You'll be working on your own as an actor, and then you'll have a nice cushion to take it through.
And let me add to that, too. If you're photo doubling, that's a $10 adjustment on that rate. So instead of working at, say, 180 for 8, you'll work at 190 for 8 hours and then get the time and a half and double time and such. Now, there's also pension and health or health and retirement benefits, too. And you're smiling really big as I'm saying that. So tell me about that.
Health insurance was everything for me. When I joined SAG-AFTRA, I had nowhere close to the amount of income to be eligible for health insurance. So for a long time, I didn't have health insurance. And working as a stand-in regularly completely made me eligible for that. And that was a really big thing for me to be able to be covered. So that was a huge perk for me.
So essentially, working as a stand-in can give you some sense of security because it can earn health insurance for you. And also it can earn toward pension when you retire. You can get a little bit of money coming in. And on the topic of security, when it comes to working in television shows get canceled. Television shows may not be renewed. How do you handle that when it comes to stand-in work? If you've been standing on a job and you worked all of one season, do you know when you go back that you're going to have your job?
Oh, heck no. But shout out to my background people, because before I worked as a stand-in on a regular show, every day was uncertain. I've seen so many background people scrolling through trying to see what job they can get for the next day. That can get pretty stressful. It's definitely a way of life. And if you're doing a stand-in for this show or that show, you're only in for one day, you're standing in for a guest star, who knows what your job's going to be tomorrow? And although working as a season stand-in might seem more secure, at the end of the day, I was working on a show that was in its first season, and that at any moment, somebody could knock on the door and say, yep, you guys are done, pack up your stuff and leave. A lot of the crew people had that in mind. You could tell people had other things lined up just in case, fallback jobs, that sort of thing. The good and bad part about doing background stand-in and photo double work as your main source of income is that it is that flexible. And so if you lose your job, there, fortunately, in New York City right now is a budding and blooming TV and film scene. So you can find work. Just got to look for it.
If you've stood in for the entire season on a show and you know there's going to be a second season, or you think there's going to be a second season, you're an actor. How do you weigh the decision to return if you're invited, maybe last minute, to stand in on that job, or go with your acting career? Have you been faced with that?
You know, I was, and it was probably one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make as part of my acting career. I was standing in on 2 different shows. I actually left one to stand in for the other. And both of them were renewed for an extra season. Both of them contacted me asking if I was willing to make that same commitment. And I told both of them, no, I don't want your heaps of money. I want to be a starving actor, which was very, very difficult to do. But I felt that it was that time. I'd spent a year on set learning what I learned, making the connections that I made, learning the skill set. The time had come to move on and going back to being starving. But I don't regret it. I wound up doing a Fringe Festival show this year, which I wouldn't have been able to do. And I've been working on other independent projects. I've been going to casting director workshops, which I wasn't able to do before. So it's had its benefits. And I'm still very, very glad that I spent that year working as a stand-in and photo double. I should also say that I still work as a stand-in every now and then, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks.
You know, I hear you. You wanted to learn about it. You got in the pool, you learned how to swim, now you've gotten out of the pool, and now you're focusing a little bit more on your acting endeavors. And you also have other endeavors in your life. You're involved in music. Tell me a little bit about how you also somehow extraordinarily balance this acting career pursuit, this income that you might get from stand-in work, and your music pursuits.
I didn't sleep much, really. I think that's what it came down to. Well, there was a point last year when I was hosting a monthly event that would be late at night on Thursdays. And then I would turn around and show up on set Friday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go.
I doubt that. I doubt you were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. As a lot of people probably know, there's nothing that fuels you better than your own passion. So if you're working as a stand-in and you're a little, oh God, what's going on? There's nothing else to do with my life. Find something else to do, even if it's volunteering on the weekends, if it's doing readings for your friend's show, as long as the people around you understand that you don't know when you'll be wrapped at the end of the day.
Cool. Now, actors are listening to this podcast, and some of those actors might think, you know what? I think there is some merit to working as a stand-in. Sounds like it's going to be tough. If I take the job, I might be sacrificing my acting career a little bit or a lot of it. Can you give some advice, some tips for that actor who's considering making the jump to stand-in work?
I would say definitely consider the time commitment. It is a huge time commitment. Yes, you learn a lot. Yes, you meet people. I've also met people who said, oh, you're a stand-in. Does that mean you're guaranteed a small role or maybe lines? I have never, ever gotten an actual acting gig from standing in on a major film or TV show. I will say that from the people I met, I wound up getting a really fun speaking gig on an independent feature film that one of the crew members was doing. And to me, that was even more valuable than some under five on a TV show.
So it's the relationships that you built on set led to other work. While you haven't been, say, upgraded as a stand-in on a project you've worked on, you've definitely landed principal work in other jobs.
Absolutely. And it was incredible to meet all of these people that, yes, they were in the same boat as me. They were working on this set all day, but then afterwards they were working on their own projects. And what better way to keep their projects running forward than to use actors that they know, that they've hung out with on set every day and that they can see have integrity, are dedicated, and are reliable.
You know, I'm going to add one other thing, and maybe you have something to share about this too. An actor who wants to take on stand-in work, the more they know about what's to be shot, say, the next day, the better they are able to manage any kind of acting conflicts that might come up or an audition that might come up. It's helpful sometimes to get what's called the call sheet, which basically has a ton of information about the shooting day. Sometimes you can get it in a preliminary form and sometimes in the finalized form. When you've stood in, have you ever been privy to the call sheets? Have you ever had them emailed to you? Have you ever used that information toward planning your acting?
The most recent project that I worked on, they did email me the call sheet. Bless their beautiful souls. It certainly isn't required, and I really couldn't tell you if it was the norm, but it definitely helped. That said, even in the best possible scenario, the call sheet is a sketch of what they plan to do the next day. So you could say, oh, it's going to be this scene, this scene, this scene, and then I'm done for the rest of the day. Well, especially the last show when I was their kind of pocket photo double. What if one part of the scene didn't get shot? The actor had to go home. They're going to keep me around until the very end of the day and then do that. And it doesn't help to have the attitude of, oh, I expect it to be done. As my favorite person in the world, Bill DeBlaise, says, expectations are preconceived disappointments.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. There are people who read the call sheet and think it's deterministic. It's not. It's a sketch. I like that metaphor for it because so often things can change around and can really muck with your expectations if you think you're going to be wrapped in a half an hour and nope, you're there all day. Alanna Blair, is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to standing in?
Absolutely. Although it's not as much standing in as photo doubling. This was something that worried me a little bit when I had said yes to this project. Oh, you want me as a maybe photo double. I might not be used. I might be used. You're going to dye my hair. You're going to have me in this actor's costume. I'm basically a bootleg version of this actor. It started out as an ego thing. I wasn't incredibly comfortable being sort of the, oh, well, the real actor's not here, so let's use her. But at the end of the day, the experience that I got from that was probably the most valuable of everything. It was all about continuity. If I could do the same thing that this actor did, then they could use it. And it's so much fun to look at these episodes and be like, that's the back of my head. That's the back of my head. Hey, look, that's the back of my head. But more than that, as an actor, now when I go into a production, I know that I have to do exactly the same thing at every take and how important that is.
Sababa, 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 sababa.
Sababa, sababa, sababa.
I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, what is Sababa, by the way?
Sababa is a band that I'm in. I play bass. It's a really, really fun, punky band. And we play around the city. We've got a couple things up on SoundCloud. You should definitely check it out.
Is there any other music that you do too?
Yeah, I also DJ drum and bass. I DJ as Bulletproof Tiger.
That's your name?
Yes, that's me. And also in the duo Tank Top NYC.
Alanna Blair, thank you so much for talking to the Acting Income podcast audience.
Ben, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
And one more time. Sababa, 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 sababa.
Sababa, 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 sababa. Ben's a fan.
Right after this interview, I found myself in the very predicament I found Alanna in when I was with her on set that one day I mentioned in the interview. I was standing in on a film, and an audition appointment came in. Do I take it, or do I pass? Was the question on my mind. The appointment was for 1:55 p.m. in Midtown. I was shooting in the Village, and I knew based on the call sheet that lunch was supposed to be around 1 p.m. Production had a hard out at the location where we were shooting, so I knew we wouldn't take a lot of meal penalties and go far past 1 p.m. Even if we took one meal penalty and went to lunch at 1:30, I'd still probably have enough time to make it uptown for the audition on time. Sure enough, we went into meal penalty, but I was let out around 1:15. I hustled uptown via subway and did my audition not too sweatily. I got out of my audition at 1:57. And since we had a company move and a walkaway lunch, I didn't have to be back on set at our new location until 3 p.m. It worked out perfectly, and I even had a sit-down lunch. So, by saying yes to the audition, using information from the call sheet, and hoping for the best, I was able to squeeze in an audition despite standing in. The stand-in job did not get in the way of my acting. I could have said no to the audition, but I don't want to lose sight of my acting goals when I'm standing in. In the past, I would have turned down auditions outright, or been scared to death I'd lose my stand-in job if I had another acting gig. Sure, I can't take every audition I'm offered, but I say yes to more of them now, and figure things out after saying yes. So, if you've been listening to this podcast over the last 27 episodes, you're hearing that I'm starting to claim my acting career more and more. Alanna may be even braver than me because she actually said no to the steady income and benefits of regular stand-in work. Is stand-in work right for you? If you're an actor, I would say it might be good, but just remember, if you're an actor, you're not a stand-in, you're an actor. Remember to keep sight of that. And if you fund your acting with stand-in work, check in with yourself to make sure you're still pursuing acting and not losing sight of it. Thanks again to Alanna Blair for providing music for this episode and for sharing her experiences balancing acting and standing in. And that's the show. This episode was sponsored by the Stand-In Handbook from Stand-In Central. To purchase the Stand-In Handbook and to get a deal on the call sheet cheat sheet, visit standincentral.com/handbook. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode27, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. If you'd like to pitch an episode idea, visit actingincome.com/pitch. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, visit actingincome.com/advertise. And if you love the content of this podcast, take a moment to review this podcast on iTunes at actingincome.com/iTunes. I'm Ben Hauck, sababa sababa sababa. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com.